podcast. Today we're going to be streaming live, like we normally do. And yeah, today this is Eric. I'm going to be your host for today, just like every week. Go ahead and introduce my two partners. Go ahead, introduce yourself, Paul.
Yeah, I'm back again. I took a little hiatus last week because I had a prior obligation to take care of. But it's good to be back, and I think we have some really interesting topics for this week, so I'm glad to be back on the podcast, and we should have some really fun stuff to talk about.
And I'm joined by another friend who's in the room with me right now. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Austin. Good to be back again for another installment of the Hollow Herald podcast. Excited for the topics that we have to discuss today, and hopefully we all learn a little something.
All right, so last week I have to apologize for that real quick. We didn't get a podcast out. That's our faults. We just were not up to par of what our quality expectations were for last week, and so we just kind of decided to scrap it, quality over quantity. So we're going to get back at you guys this week with one, and it should be awesome. So today I think we're going to start off with a little quiz, a little bit of a different one than we normally do. We're going to every week we like to figure out a little bit more about our friend Austin. So go ahead and give him his psych quiz, Dr. Zork. Oh, Dr. Paul.
Well, this isn't necessarily a psych quiz. It's courtesy of BuzzFeed, and it will tell him what career he should actually have. So one of the rules is when you answer each of the questions, you must pretend they're all offering the same salary that you can comfortably live on. So let's assume that they're all offering about $50,000 a year.
Okay, I can live on that easy.
All right. Which would you rather be, a legal assistant, a film producer, or a shop clerk?
Film producer.
What career would you rather have, a celebrity stylist, a software programmer, or a librarian?
Software programmer.
Which of these careers would you rather have, a math professor, a bus driver, or a YouTuber?
Bus driver.
Bus driver.
Which career would you rather have, a small business owner, a concert pianist, or a dentist?
Small business owner.
Concert piano.
You can't answer the questions for me.
Which of these careers would you rather have, a magazine editor, a gardener, or surgeon?
Magazine editor.
Which career would you want? Animal shelter manager, politician, or a fashion designer?
Fashion designer. Austin is all about fashion.
All about the fashion.
Which career would you rather have? A call center employee, a hairstylist, or a sales rep? Call center employee.
No, come on, guys.
We know you better than you know yourself, so let's just get on with it. We got this.
Okay, keep going.
Which of these careers would you rather have? A coach, a museum curator, or a real estate broker?
Curator.
What kind of coach? What are we talking? Like a women's gymnastic coach, or
well, those seem right up Austin's alley.
Or a sumo wrestling coach, or what kind of coach?
I want to be a curator.
That's way too ambiguous. There's so many different kinds of coaches.
It just generally says coach. I mean, it's BuzzFeed. Nothing they do has ever been scientific or real in their entire lives. All right. Which career would you rather have? An anesthesiologist, a Broadway singer, or a financial advisor? Singer.
Anesthesiologist.
All right. Which of these careers would you rather have? An administrative assistant, a substitute teacher, or a game designer?
Admin assistant.
Interesting. Which best describes you? I tend to speak up about how I feel. I do not usually speak up about how I feel.
I do not usually speak up how I feel.
Which of these best describes you? I can be defensive when it comes to change. I typically go with the flow when it comes to change.
I go with the flow.
I don't know. All right. Which of the following describes you? I enjoy hands-on work. I do not enjoy hands-on work.
I enjoy hands-on work.
What sentence best describes you? I'd rather give advice than receive it. I prefer receiving advice rather than giving it.
I rather give.
Which best describes you? I work hard when I'm passionate about something. I work hard but will abandon a project when I hit a dead end.
Oh, come on. We all know.
What would I do?
Austin's an abandoner.
What?
Austin is like the biggest abandoner.
You're going to abandon it.
What?
All right. Which of the following describes you? I'm good at making decisions. I'm not good at making decisions.
I'm not good at making decisions.
Come on. Just skip through it. We know the answers
Select
to all
which is
these
true
already.
for you. You're a good listener, or your listening skills can be improved.
They
He
can be
listens
improved.
too much.
I listen too
as is evidence. All right, so select which is true for you. I'm not comfortable when I have to sit for long periods of time. I'm
Yes.
okay with sitting for long periods as long as I have breaks.
Oh, he loves to sit. Austin's favorite pastime is sitting.
I guess I'm a sitter.
How many more?
I am comfortable. I am comfortable when I can plan things. I don't mind being spontaneous or being put on the spot.
I like planning things out.
I am organized. I do not work well with structure.
How many questions
Organized.
are there? Jeez, is this like a
All
quiz
right,
for the...
we have a result here.
All right, good. I'm excited.
So you got
Wait, can I
the
guess? Can I, wait.
straightforward
Can I,
career.
oh.
You feel the most confident in a low-pressure job that feels second nature to you. You prefer feeling relaxed within your work environment, not stressed out. Managing people isn't your cup of tea, and you often prefer the peace that comes with working by yourself. You enjoy multitasking by listening to music, a podcast, or audiobook as you work. This doesn't mean you're unmotivated. You just do not prefer a lot of responsibility. The career for you would include working in data, computer systems, farming/gardening, copy editing, transportation, website creation, or the fine arts. Stay away from sales, advertising, marketing, managing, producing, and consulting. So, awesome.
Wait, what does copying mean? Is it copy editing?
Yeah, it's copy editing. So, like, I guess editing copies of something.
That sounds like a crabby job.
Yeah, that
no
doesn't
offense.
sound-
I'm sorry if any of our viewers have that out there.
Yeah.
Literally, you just edit other people's copies of stuff?
I mean, I was planning on being a farmer, so the BuzzFeed is right on the nose.
Agriculture.
You know, I'm going to...
You made a tweet just recently, didn't you, that was like,
Yeah,
you-
yeah.
if you have any... I'm sitting in my ag science class, and do you have any ideas how mixed reality could fit into that? Did you get... I didn't see
No
if there was any
feedback.
response.
There's nothing out there. Well, at least from our followers.
Surprise, surprise. You ask a bunch of nerds what they're going to do for the farmers, and no, you don't get any
No,
response. So I'm curious.
no salvation.
So something must have stirred this up in your head. What ideas did you have? You must have been thinking of something, though, right?
I'm not really sure. Maybe like helping train farmhands on how to perform surgeries on cattle or dairy, stuff like that, or like analyzing a field somehow with the Hollands using a augmented reality with it, like soil health or whatever. I'm really not sure. I haven't really dug too deep into that topic, but I was just curious. But
Do you think you could use like almost a fluid simulation, and you could plan out your fields in the best way, like where
Yeah.
irrigation would be the most efficient?
yeah, definitely. I think that would be a very viable and simple way of planning out how you're going to water your fields, especially because with my experience on working on a farm, we had to do that every year. And that's a tedious process of planning out irrigation and where you're going to lay pipe and what's the best route to take the water. And I think using augmented reality in such a way might prove beneficial.
And do you think that will help in a lot with like outflow? Like, so I hear a lot of farms, like they waste a lot of water and soil because they're inefficient with the way they water. So they like send a lot of their soil and like fertilizer into our waterways, and it's just lost forever.
Yeah.
And it's really bad for the environment because it's in such high concentrations in the water. So do you think something like this could help
Yeah.
kind of mitigate things like that?
Yeah, definitely. If the use of a headset or whatever could accurately depict what needs to be done with the watering situation, I think it would really improve the efficiency of irrigation and make it so we lose a lot less water and put a lot less chemicals down the drain.
Interesting.
So we
So would you see more of like a headset use, or do you think we would put this on like a tractor and use a tractor to map
Yeah.
out the field?
Yeah, tractor would be sweet. And then you could just drive along the field and analyze what needs to be done.
So we have a guy one of our viewers watching right now, Chad. He's talking about how he's going to give a presentation on the history of VR, AR, and also he says since he's asked to talk about MR because that's a thing now. I'm curious to think like I'm gonna assume you're in college just because that's what we're at. So yeah, if you guys went around your college today and you asked like how many people knew what MR was, if you just brought, so if you, okay, we'll say you started with VR, you say, do you know what VR is? And they tell you, then you ask them what AR is, and they can tell you what that is. And you asked them what MR is. What do you think the breakdown would be? Like 100% of people would know that what VR is, 100% of people would know what AR is, and 20% would know. What do you guys think? Just assuming, stereotyping.
Okay, so I think VR, I could probably see like 95% people knowing, closer to 100 probably, so probably like 99. I'd say like you obviously have your under the rock type people that may not know. AR, I think you'd probably see like 60 to 70%, and then MR, probably lower than 10% of people knowing what it is. Like, I'd probably have to talk to like computer science majors and maybe people who are more in the know, I guess.
Yeah. What about you? You kind of go to a little bit of a different school, Austin, more agricultural based school. What do you think?
When I talk to people about it, most people generally know what virtual reality is. I think that's just because it's been marketed really heavily. But anywhere other than that, you kind of have to explain it to them, and they just give you the weirdest, blankest stares, like what you're trying to explain mixed reality to them. And you kind of just have to show them for them to understand. So a lot of people do not know what those terms mean. Yeah.
And what I found with my friends when talking about it is people actually thought like Google Glass was not like AR. Like,
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people just didn't fully understand what Google Glass was doing at all. Mm-hmm. It's what it seemed to me. At least just when talking with my friends this past weekend about like VR and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So-
well, it's a pretty abstract concept until you've like tried it. It's really hard to either explain or to understand. And we've talked about that a lot. How, especially because VR, it's pretty easy. It's like putting yourself inside of a video game. That's a really easy way to sum it up. But AR is like, okay, well, let's take images and let's overlay them in your visual spectrum, and people kind of get that a little bit. It's like, okay, and then you say like Google Glass or like Pokemon Go, and then it starts to get into their heads a little bit more. Before we had Google Glass and before we had Pokemon Go, those were very very hard concepts to explain. Then you get into the newest one, mixed reality, and that's when you really start to lose people, especially if they've never tried or heard of anything like the HoloLens, because it is like the first device. And I'm curious to how that will affect adoption. I always talk about adoption. I get obsessed thinking about it. I'm just curious how like people not having a concept of what it is, how that will affect the adoption and the people purchasing it and stuff, or be willing to try it. What do you guys think?
Well, that leaves the question, like, is mixed reality like for consumers, or is it for more business like situations? So,
That's a good point. Let's go more for consumer. We're talking about consumer grade because obviously employers will see it and their tech guys will get everybody into it, But let's just say from a consumer perspective, an individual consumer perspective.
Do you think it was easier to sell the idea of like, so before smartphones we had Palm Pilots, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think it was easier to sell that? It would be easier to sell that idea to someone from, let's say we're in the 1980s and cell phones are just about to come out. Like we have car phones, and then later on we'll get the big cell phones. So at that time, how hard do you think it would have been able to sell someone, here's basically what you've had on your desk all these years that you can use in your hand. It's a mini computer you can use in your hand. How hard do you think that like it would be to just tell someone to visualize that without putting something in their hand immediately? Just showing them a commercial. Like, what do you guys think? Do you think it's easier to sell that, or do you think it's easier to sell an MR device, or do you think they're similar?
Ooh, I think they're similar, but so the 80s was kind of a renaissance for that kind of technology time. That's when not 80s into 90s, that's when we saw a lot of like actually consumers getting into these technologies. And like you said, like stuff like a phone and a Palm Pilot. Oh man, I mean, I can't even, it's really hard to have, like I said, it's really hard to have a scope of that, because since we've grown up with it, it's really hard to put ourselves in a place without that kind of technology. Ooh, that's a good question, because I guess it makes a little bit more sense because you just say you get a computer and you put it in your hand, and it's basically a mini computer. That kind of, you can kind of get there. But with mixed reality, it's like you take holograms, which is already a foreign concept, and you put them in your space through a device on your head. But it's, I don't know. Oh man, I don't know. That's a good question. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, it's definitely trying to sell it to me like when I first started with the Hollow Herald, like you were trying to explain to me, and I had no clue what I was getting myself into or what to expect, and it definitely needs to be, at least for me, a hands-on experience, to be able to understand more fully what mixed reality is, and so just by someone explaining it to me, it kind of makes it more difficult.
I wonder how many people know what the HoloLens is. Like, I'm so curious because I'll bring it up in so many discussions and it just, nobody even knows what it is. And then you have to try to explain it and it's just like, I just kind of give up most of the times. It's like, I just, here, put it on your head, try it. That's the easiest way to explain it.
Or I'd show them a YouTube video that we've made.
Exactly. But even a YouTube video is kind of like, oh, that's cool. Because it's like, oh man, it's such a weird concept to explain. All right, what's some of our news topics we got? We kind of got derailed for half a second. What's some of our discussions that we have to?
So something interesting I found today is that NASA has partnered with the Unreal Engine to make a VR. They call it MR, but they use the HTC Vive, and what they do is they build a space station basically and use the MR and a machine that simulates zero gravity in order to simulate what the space station is like without having astronauts have to go into that pool that they use most of the time, and really be able. They built like the International Space Station, and they have like them solve problems in this MR environment using VR. So I thought that was a really interesting use of like just using like it's VR. It's using the HTC Vive, but it is MR, and the fact that there is like a tactile feel because there is like they built the ISS around these people. Like there's like railings inside the room. I watched an interesting video about it where it's literally a guy like he's moving a box around, and when it shows like the VR view, it looks like he's in space moving a box around. So I thought it was a really cool application. And
so do you think this is a lot more immersive than actually going into the pool and doing it there?
I wouldn't say it's more immersive. I would say that it's less expensive.
Oh yeah.
And I think you can simulate a lot more in that environment than you can in the pool because it's just a code. If you need to like simulate, there was an impact on the ISS, you can't simulate that in the pool, but you can simulate that on a VR simulation or an MR simulation. So I just thought it was a really cool application of these new concepts that we're coming out with nowadays. And I don't know, I thought that that use really kind of opens it up to the business environment where a lot of other businesses could start using things like this. So I was just wondering what you guys thought, because I thought it was really interesting.
I think that's really cool because, like you said, it is a lot cheaper and a lot more cost effective to do that. So it gives these astronauts the ability to do a lot more training and hone in their skills and become like awesome astronauts at what they do. And I think that's cool. It helps them become the best they can be.
I think it's actually pretty interesting. Microsoft with the HoloLens has really been pushing a lot of NASA stuff. If you go and you can search on YouTube, you can search HoloLens in space, and they actually sent one up with the astronauts. There's like videos, like the astronauts always do like little vlog videos where they'll like squirt water or open a soda and prove that it doesn't have any carbonation, or it doesn't, even if you shake up a soda, it doesn't explode in space, and little stuff like that. And they have some videos of them using the HoloLens in space, and it's really cool, actually. I think that's cool to pair such like futuristic technologies and to bring it. And it's really cool of NASA to be so like testing such beta software, as software and hardware to take it on like that. That's really cool. I can see some really sweet comparisons. We actually have just here local in Utah, I saw a doctor's office that was mixing MRI scans with their brain. Did you guys see that video?
Yeah, I thought that was another very interesting use. Like, more and more we just see these like better uses, and they're such more cost effective. It's like 3D printing something without having to 3D print it. So, I the possibilities are just endless with MR in terms of like where can you save money. It's really cool.
Yes, exactly. So we have Levi in the comments. He just says how to make it work for people with peripheral vision. So I'm gonna assume he means Levi. You could tell. Welcome to the stream first of all, Ed. You could tell me if I'm off base with this. I'm assuming you're meaning how the FOV of the HoloLens is quite narrow compared to your visual spectrum. Well, the interesting thing about this is we've been wanting to make a video on this because a lot of people talk about the FOV of the HoloLens, but not many people talk about why the FOV of the HoloLens is so small. And you're right, you can't see out your peripheral visions. And I've heard conflicting things. What do you guys think? I hear some people say they like the FOV, and some people say they really want the FOV bigger. What do you guys think?
In my use of the HoloLens, like when I'm using it, it doesn't bother me. Like I don't notice it, unless I'm actually like noticing it. If that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. What about you, Paul?
Yeah.
For me, like I notice it, but you don't mind it.
Yeah.
And I think it would be cool to show it, to have the entire thing be shown like in our videos, where it's just not a little square of your vision showing everything, but it's like the entire, like you're seeing everything with your eyes. I think that would be really cool. I don't know how possible that is, because just some limiting factors. And it might be possible in the future, as these devices get a little smaller and we can make them.
So that's what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about why FOV is the way it is. So
continue.
The FOV on the HoloLens, I've thought a lot about it, and I thought from like a dev perspective and a hardware perspective and everything like this. And I'm sure the devs would love to make the FOV as big as possible, because why wouldn't you want that? But the HoloLens already costs $3,000. And with the $3,000, you're paying for R&D, you're paying for hardware, and you're paying for software. And to make the FOV bigger, you have to go back and you have to do a lot more R&D. You have to add a lot more hardware, and you have to have a lot beefier software. So to do those things, you're going to be boosting the cost of the HoloLens, and you're probably going to be boosting the size and the power consumption and the materials needed and all of this stuff. So I think what they probably did a lot of testing to find kind of that sweet spot, the sweet spot where they could add in the right amount of glass. Because the HoloLens, when you look at it from someone wearing it, like you can see on the picture right now, it looks like it covers their whole face. But when you actually have it on, it's like a pair of glasses. It's, two little squares in front of you. And there's like about 4 or 5 panes of glass right there. Now, could you imagine having all 5 of those panes of glass wrap all the way around your view? And then also you have to get light beams. And then you also have to have better processing power to process more holograms. Then you also have to have longer battery life. So I think what they probably did is they went in and they found a really good sweet spot. And in my opinion, I think it's a perfect sweet spot. The HoloLens, any heavier, I'd be like, oh, this is a little heavy. Any smaller FOV, I'd be like, that's a little bit too much. So I think it's like a really good sweet spot of the two things. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I would definitely. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest selling point for the HoloLens is that it's a standalone unit. It's small, it's compact. You just turn it on and it's good to go. And I think that's why I like it so much, even with the smaller FOV, and anything bigger, like you said, Eric, it would be kind of just bulky and annoying.
Yeah, what do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. Like, maybe they will come out with an edition that has a bigger FOV, but it will feel like a helmet. Like, they're going to need to mount it on your head a lot more robustly than just like a band. And I know they have the headband that will hold it better, but that's like an add-in. I think if they do make it, it'll have to be like an actual helmet design in order to use that. And who's going to want to wear a helmet around? So I think that'll only be for a specific type of user if it does become bulky. But personally, right now, where it is perfectly fine. It's not like it doesn't ruin your immersion or anything like that. And really, it doesn't, I don't think it affects the usefulness of the device. Like, you can
Not at
still
all.
fit a very good screen inside of the FOV, and you can still fit a relatively large surface area of holograms inside of your FOV. So I like it personally.
Yes, I mean, you guys can go ahead and you guys can go check out how big can holograms get, and that can really show you like how much hologram you can fit in that air quotes small quote unquote small FOV if we compare it to something like the Meta or some of the competitors. But exactly, so that was a big. I've noticed that topic has died down quite a bit, though. When we first started making videos, big deals about FOV. We had to make a video about it. We had to explain FOV. Everybody was asking about what's the FOV. I haven't seen that as much. Have you guys noticed the people talking about it as much?
No, it's really died down.
Yeah, I've definitely not. I haven't seen an article about like FOV in particular since like forever. So I think it's definitely died down, and I think people who were writing about it before may have actually had a chance to try the device and realized, oh, it's not as big as of a factor as you would think. Or maybe they went to the demo and they were like, oh, that's kind of lame, but then they did it again and again, and they were like, after a while, you just stop noticing that it's like that. So
Exactly. Also, I can't think of too many applications where you would need like a full 180 view of holograms. I mean, how many situations are you in where you're going to need peripheral holograms in the side of your eyes? Maybe in a car with like heads up displays and stuff like that. But I can't think of a whole lot of situations where you would need peripheral vision. But I mean, interesting topic. Great question though. Very, very, very heated debate back in the day about that, and not so much anymore. But
I think it's good that the FOV is sort of limited, and especially like not having holograms in the peripherals, because it's kind of like a safety, you know. I don't want
exactly.
Yeah.
Don't get too into it, kind of thing. Yeah, some people like that because I know with like fragments or Holotor. With Holotor, people kind of like that the virtual reality isn't so encompassing. You know, it's kind of like you're in the virtual space, but you're still in your space, kind of thing. So Chad brings up an interesting point. He says, "Have you guys thought about quantum computing in the future, mixed with AR and MR technology? How crazy would it be to have crazy processing speed with the goggles?" That is a interesting discussion. I had a coworker that we were talking about. Would we ever need 128-bit processors? You know, and because a lot of people think 64-bit is where we're going to max out, but that's obviously not true. You know, there's always going to be progression in technology. I was trying to think of situations where you would need, because when you look at bits on processors and stuff like that, I mean, that's like trillions and trillions of bits, like processing power. So would you ever really need that? And he says, what about if you're trying to measure the amount of atoms inside of a building or something like that? And I was kind of like, oh crap, that's insane to think about. Like in the future, we're going to be measuring how many atoms are inside of stuff, and the quantum physics of like the universe and stuff like that. And I thought it'd be pretty cool to mix with mixed reality. Could you imagine having like such good graphics that you would never even tell the difference between mixed reality and like not mixed reality, because instead the resolution would be basically down to the atomic level of resolution. What do you guys think about that? Nothing?
I think it would be a really incredible thing to see. I'm not sure how, like, I think it would be really cool just to like see. I think there's going to be a usefulness for all of these technologies, especially an emerging one like quantum computing. At this point, I can't see, like, when you say, oh, the atoms in a building, like, why is that useful to your everyday person or even someone who is specifically looking at that stuff? I think a rough estimate would be fine. And I'm just not sure. Like right now, our scope is so limited and concerned with these things.
Right.
So I don't see the use of it. But I'm sure in the future there will be, and I'm not going to be like, oh, it's such a waste of money, it's such a waste of time in the future, because I'm sure we'll have reasons to use it. But at this point, I do not see a reason for it. But if you build the hardware, someone's going to build the software to use it.
Yeah, so I'm just more talking like sci-fi because I guess we can relate the same conversation. It's like, Star Trek back in the 80s, they thought of this and that was like, the holodeck or all of that kind of stuff seemed super futuristic. But I mean, that was only like 30 years ago and people thought, oh man, there would never really be a need for that. I don't know. It's just interesting to see the progression of technology and such. But quantum computing is pretty interesting because we have all this power, but we don't really have anything to do with it. Exactly like you said, Paul. It's like, wow, cool, we have all this power, but like you said, a rough estimate's probably fine. It's an interesting discussion.
I'm sure we can find something to do with that power, though.
Oh yeah.
Eventually, once the tech comes around, yeah.
My coworker said when you start trying to count the stars in the sky and you start trying to count universes and stuff like that, it's like that's when you're going to need insane processing power. Or like, oh man, that'd be so cool. What else do we have on our discussion list today, guys?
So just in terms of internet privacy, there was an interesting bill that passed the Senate the other day. So this bill undoes an FCC regulation. Well, it would undo. It hasn't passed the House of Representatives, and President Trump has not signed it yet, so it's not a law yet. But they're trying to repeal this this regulation that says ISPs, internet service providers, have to get your express consent to sell your internet history to advertisers and things like that. So I thought this was an interesting regulation in that why are they taking like that seems like something that I should have a right to like know that it's being sold, don't you think? So I just thought it was interesting that something like this would be repealed because I don't see the harm it does to ISPs to not be able to sell that. But I want to hear what you guys think.
So exactly, it states. So I haven't heard much about it, so getting a little bit more information. So it says that now ISPs can come in and they don't have to tell me if they're selling my information, correct? Or
no, yes. So they can sell your information without telling you they sold your information.
Okay.
Now, why do they want to do that without telling us?
You could sell it to advertisers. So you could say, okay, here's this person's most visited sites. So if you're trying to target this demographic, only advertise on these sites and things like that. So right now that doesn't sound like a bad thing. Exactly. But what if they stop selling to advertisers and go farther and farther?
Exactly. So that's what I was going to say. So I think with all forms of privacy or internet privacy especially, it's always a slippery slope. They take an inch and 1,000 inches equal a mile. Obviously, that's not true, but you guys know what I mean. An inch until it takes a mile. So we could see this in the future where it's like, okay, they're not just selling your internet history, they're selling your browsing traffic, what you're doing on those websites, how you're doing it, the messages you're sending, like hyper-personalized information, which to some people, they don't really care. It's like, oh, well, I get ads that are more catered to me, but at the same time, it's like, do I really want ads that are more catered to me? But it's interesting though they're reappealing it. So it was a rule that they had to tell you before, and now it's not. Is that what you're saying, Paul?
Yes. So former President Obama made it a regulation, I believe, back in like November of last year, of 2016, and the Senate is using the Congressional Review Act to repeal it quickly. So I don't need to go into specifics about that, but all you need to know is that it was a regulation for like a couple months, and now they're trying to get rid of it.
Are they going to replace it with something else, or are they just saying...
No, it seems like the FCC chairman is completely against anything to do with protecting consumers on the internet. We're also planning on getting into net neutrality, so I'll just start the discussion as well. So he also said that
we'll try to stay as far away from politics as possible in most like the technical and internet side of things. Go ahead, Paul. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So he said that net neutrality was a mistake, which net neutrality, for anyone who doesn't know, is the idea that all internet traffic should be treated the same, and ISPs cannot say hey Google, pay us money so people using your site get faster data speeds than, say, someone who goes to a competitor like a Yahoo, or I don't know who competes with them in terms of email.
A simple way to break that down a little bit is kind of think of cable providers. So you have like people like Comcast, and you have people like DirecTV, and you have Dish, and you have all these different people. We can say those would technically be your ISP, which they theoretically are. ISPs, most of them. So you have those, and those would be your ISP. And now, like, since I have Dish, I don't get FX. I just can't access FX. But if I have, DirecTV, then I get FX. Kind of the same, like, that's an extreme version of the spectrum, but theoretically that's what could possibly happen if we didn't have these checks and balances put in place. Is an ISP could come along and say, oh yeah, you have to pay a premium to get access to YouTube or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Or a competitor, like Paul said, there's someone competing against, Comcast's service, so they just block access to it, or they provide slower internet to it. Anyways, continue on, Paul.
So I just think that these kind of regulations, I just kind of wanted to hear what you guys think. Do you think an ISP should be like a utility provider, where they're in substance owned by the government but ran privately? So for example, like your power companies, which they're owned privately, but the government controls almost every facet of it because they consider it to be like an important utility. So like everyone needs electricity. So do you think at this point we should say everyone needs internet, and the government should step in and say, you can't do this because it like restricts innovation on the internet, it restricts people's free speech?
So we've spent a lot of time talking about this, or topics related to this, and I think a lot of the problems doesn't stem necessarily from net neutrality. I think it's the fact that we have such limited options for ISPs. I think that's where a lot of the problem stems from, because in a fair market, if an ISP says they're going to block access to Google, I'm going to go to someone else. You know what I mean? And they lose business and they're not going to work it. But the problem is we don't have any access to go to anybody else, right? So in town here, we have like 2 internet providers that are worth a darn, and if both of them decide they're going to block access to certain things, it's like, what the heck am I going to choose? And that's where it has to come in. So I think a lot of the problem stems from just the lack of options for ISPs. I mean, internet speeds is one of the biggest problems facing the United States. It is, as it stands, we're like rated like 15 or 20 in internet speeds per country, and that's, I mean, we have there's countries that are way far behind us technologically, but surpass us in internet speed and internet access and stuff like that. It's quite crazy. What do you think, Austin?
Really, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about I don't know.
I think we're kind of, as a group, we're kind of for less control of the government and in all facets, especially when it comes to internet. I want their hands away from it as possible. And I think when the government starts making regulations, it can get kind of dangerous. But at the same time, the big corporations, like, who's going to stand up to them? I mean, me and you, Paul, we've looked into starting our own ISP, or starting our own internet service and stuff like that. And it's basically impossible. You have to bank off of someone else's lines, and you basically have to go through Comcast if you want to make your own ISP. So basically, you're a subset of Comcast. I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I was actually just about to ask. So, do you think this is a situation where maybe the government should repeal all the regulations, but then say, we're going to own all of the fiber cables that you lay, so we technically own your access to the internet. Like, we own the ISP's access to give us access to the internet, and allow a bunch of other companies to come in and buy access for the same amount as these big companies. So kind of like almost create a competitive market. So say Comcast, you have to break up Spectrum, you have to break up, who else is, didn't Time Warner and... any big ISP has to break up so there's more competition. Do you think that is something the government should do? Do you think this is a deal of antitrust in the fact that ISPs should have to compete on speed, services, and like privacy now? Like,
yes.
Why do you guys see the government's role in doing this? Do you think it's their duty to just manage who's in it now, or do you think it's their duty to be like, Comcast, you're no longer as big as you are. You have to sell off this much percentage of your ownings, of your like subsidiaries?
See, this is where it gets kind of hard and touchy because most people, I don't know. I, for one, am against like government controls of businesses in any sort, when they start coming in and saying who you have to hire or who you could sell to or blah, 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 whatever it is, whatever it happens to be when they start telling businesses, I think it get kind of dangerous. But there is a point when, is internet an inalienable right? Is internet access a guaranteed right to a human nowadays? And I guess once you start at that, you can kind of branch off to bigger, different levels. So what do you guys think? Do you think internet should be an inalienable right, access to it?
I think it is. It's the access to information, and I think that it is important. It is as important as our freedom of speech because it allows us to speak freely all around the world. And I think if governments start to accept that, you can see that it can be used as like a foreign policy tool in the fact that your citizens will be on the internet talking about like free ideals, so like the spread of democracy, things like that. So if a country such as North Korea, like people get out of there, like, and they go and they find some way to get past the firewalls and get on the internet, they'll see these people living a way that they never knew existed for people to live in. Like, the way North Korea has it is all the propaganda says, oh, everyone outside of North Korea is living much worse. But if they get on the internet, they'd be able to see that people live much better than them. And I think this could be a cool way to bring about like change if we just all agreed that internet is inalienable and no one can limit what sites you visit and no one can limit your access to that internet.
But
and everyone...
isn't there like dangerous information that is passed through the internet that could be, that we would want to monitor or want to get rid of?
I'm not saying you can't monitor the internet, but I'm saying you shouldn't censor the internet by playing favorites with companies and saying, or with websites and saying, oh, because you don't post like race baiting articles, you're gonna get all the internet speed. The news site that posts those isn't gonna get any internet traffic speed just because they don't support ideas we like. I think that's a very wrong way to look at things, and right. I think all ideas are worth hearing at some point. So when you say dangerous information, could you like expand on that a little more? Do you think like someone who's like a communist, is that dangerous information to be spreading?
It can be. It can cause like disputations and just arguing,
That's good. So we're always we've always wanted arguing, and we've always had discussions.
Could it lead to something bigger than just an argument, though?
A rebellion. See, that's where so we can look to China. China has a very interesting way to look at the internet. They have the Great Firewall, right? The Great Firewall of China, and the government gets to choose what sites are allowed and what sites aren't allowed. And if you want to be allowed, you have to abide by all these regulations. You have to provide them with ways to censor it. You have to provide them with all this interesting stuff like that. And you have to look, does that affect China's scope and what they're able to accomplish? And there's arguments for both sides, so we won't get into that too heavily. But we've decided that internet is an inalienable right? So I guess now we have to decide, is it the government's obligation to provide that for someone? So they provide us with telephone, they provide us with electricity, I guess corporations still provide us with all of that stuff, but there's a flat rate for a telephone. You pay $25, you can get a telephone. Is there something like that for internet? Should the government have? Sorry, go ahead.
I think a couple countries have actually added this. I think I sent an article a little while ago about Australia calling it an inalienable right, or was it Canada? It was one of those two countries, and I think it's very interesting to look at how are these countries. So they claim it's going to be an inalienable right. Well, how are you going to do it? Are you going to make it a state-owned company, or are you going to subsidize corporations to go into locations where it might not be as business effective? And then you run the risk of these corporations becoming inefficient and being a drain on resources that could be put better elsewhere. So I would say the way they should do it is just say it's an open market and everyone has to share the same fiber cables. So if you're a private company, you can't just lay your own fiber and restrict people from using it. You have to let everyone use the fiber and will pay for the fiber. So that's just my view on it.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before. And so I think the problem with talking about net neutrality, and I think the thing that people are missing a lot, is it's kind of a hot buzzword for a lot of, news agencies and politicians and online, spaces. I think the problem stems a lot simpler than what they're making it out to be. I think we need to go in and we need to make these certain assumptions first, and then it makes solving problems like net neutrality a lot easier, because the internet is really the wild, wild west, and access to it. And do we want it to be the wild, wild west? What do we want it to be? We have to take a step back and say, where do we want to see internet in 15 years or 20 years? Not where do we want to see it now, where do we want to see it then? And what checks and balances can we put in place to make sure that everybody has access to it and people's opinions aren't being stifled, or, it's not just one big hate fest or whatever it happens to be, So I think everybody just needs to take a step back and think about it. Think about more core, high level topics and that stuff. And I think about that Interestingly enough, speaking of politicians, a politician just came out and he said automation is not a threat to people's jobs, and nor will it be. Did you guys see that article I sent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was utterly a ridiculous statement.
Yeah, that's silly.
Well, that guy's a pretty big wig. I don't remember exactly who it was. I deleted it off Slack, I think. So, but if one of you guys could find that real quick while I talk about it. So he comes along and he says that the government isn't even thinking about automation right there. They're not even. It does not even show up on their spectrum. It's not a threat. They don't see any threat to people's jobs yet. Futurist and very high level people in business and in philosophy state that by 2030, between 33 and 55% of jobs will be automated. And that's as we know them today. So there definitely could be jobs to replace those in the future. But I'm just saying, jobs that we know today, within a decade, 55 to 33% of those jobs might not exist anymore. And a lot of people agree on this. And I think it's very scary for our government to come out and say, oh, this isn't even on our spectrum. While people are worrying about bringing the jobs back to, there was a really interesting statistic in there that if one of you guys could find it while I'm talking, that he talks about how people are worried about their jobs getting taken to foreign lands, but nobody's even thinking about their jobs getting taken by robots. It's something like only 33% of jobs got taken to foreigners, and then I don't want to say statistics because I don't want to say anything that's false. Could someone help me out real quick? Can anybody find it? Oh, okay, well, I'm going to run an ad real quick. We'll be right back. Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Let me see. I just found it. Robots expected to take 38% of jobs by 2030. So even the statistic I was saying was wrong. Okay, so what's this guy? Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. I don't know who he is. He says it's not even on our radar. He was a former Goldman Sachs executive and hedge fund manager, said adding machines would not pose any challenge to jobs for another 50 to 100 years. He says he's not worried at all. What do you guys think about that?
I think he's dead wrong.
Yeah, right. I think that's an utterly just ridiculous thing to say, in the fact that we have lost so many manufacturing jobs, and it's not the result of these jobs going overseas to, say, China or Indonesia or Bangladesh. It's rather that these jobs are being lost because of automation. Like, that's one of the biggest factors. That's literally all we learn about in business school right now is, like, I'm in an international economics class, and we talk about these protectionist trade theories, and we're talking about, like, the current political environment, and it's like a lot of these statistics are inflated because these companies, like, they just picked automated systems over their workers. They're not shipping the jobs anywhere. They're still keeping their manufacturing in the United States. They're just buying robots instead of workers. So
Exactly.
it's already happening. It's happening right in front of us, and there's something that does need to be done about it, and there's something that needs to be done about it quick.
So here's the statistic I sent. It says federal data show that though the manufacturing workforce has shrunk, this is on Fox News. You guys can just Google it. Probably just Google Steve, whatever his name is, and then all the crap pops up about it. Federal data show that though the manufacturing workforce has shrunk, U.S. production output has grown. Interesting. Factories are able to produce more with fewer employees because machines have been able to do much of this work for less money. This, not trade, accounts for 88% of the manufacturing jobs lost in recent years. A team of researchers at Bell State University in Indiana determined trade accounted for roughly 13% of manufacturing sector job loss. So of that 88% of jobs that have gone, only 13% of it is for trade, and trade accounted for that. I mean, isn't that just quite mind-blowing? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it is pretty insane, but it's completely understandable. Why would labor costs these days is 70% of a company's costs. So if you can start saving about 70%, you're doing really, really well for yourself. So these robots, they have a high fixed cost, of course. Like, they cost a lot to put in, so you won't see small companies putting them in at first. But when big companies put them in, they can get rid of a lot of them. I was reading unions do protect the workers there from losing their jobs to automation right now, but they get moved elsewhere in the company, so they're not necessarily saving money yet. But once those workers retire, it's not like they're going to hire more people. Like, they're going to stop hiring people for those jobs. So once those people retire, they're not going to have to pay labor anymore. They're just going to be paying based on kilowatt hours, which I don't know what the price of a kilowatt hour is, but it's dirt cheap compared to what you're going to pay an hourly factory worker.
So, Paul or Eric, is there like a solution for this problem? Like, with people that are losing their jobs, do they have like compensation? Do they get training? What happens to them?
So there's quite a few. This is like the golden question right now, like in the tech and future community. The golden question is, what is the solution to this problem? And you can find out many answers, such as basic income, or there's, you work alongside robots, or a robot replaces and you get paid for it. There's so many different solutions that people have. The golden problem, I think, with that is if you look at who's trying to solve the problem, it's not the government. We just proved right there that the Treasury Secretary says it's not even a problem. So that just proves it right freaking there. So if we look at who is trying to solve this problem, it's corporations like Google. Elon Musk is helping with it, with the OpenAI. Sam Altman's probably one of the biggest people for it to get. He is founder of Y Combinator and tons of other companies. It's these ultra wealthy, ultra intelligent entrepreneurs that are solving these problems for us, not the government. And I think that is quite threatening. Well, not threatening. I think that's quite interesting, and I cannot wait to see how this develops in the future.
So,
what do you guys think?
So do you think automation in the future will leave us to be able to think greater, have bigger ideas, and progress even faster?
Yes, obviously. I think there's so much debate about what it is going to right now from very intellectual people on both sides. Some people say you can't leave people to just do nothing, and some people think you can do people to just nothing. And the weird thing is not really anybody's conducting any studies on this. There's never been very many studies done. Some very, very low count, not very well done, not very trustworthy information. There's been some studies done on it, like basic income. There's been very, very few studies done on basic income to see how it actually affects people or how stuff like this. And Sam Altman and Elon Musk, they've come together with this. It's called a company called OpenAI. It's a completely nonprofit company, and what they're doing is you can, if I understand correctly, Paul, they're selecting random people throughout the country from all different levels of wealth and income and education levels and all these different stuff, and they're going to give them the equivalent of basic income and see what happens, right? Is it? Do I understand correctly?
Yes. Yes. So you'll get a basic income for 2 years, and it's no strings attached money, and they give it to you, and they're selecting people from all walks of life. And I believe on their site right now they're looking for someone to run the project. So if anyone's interested in doing that, I'm sure if you look it up, Y Combinator Basic Income, it's their research institute. You might be able to get a job with them for 2 years running this little study for them on basic income. Also, not happening in the United States, but happening in Canada, I believe the Canadian government is trying a basic income in 2 cities, like just major cities. They're just giving anyone who lost their job due to their manufacturing job is getting a basic income pretty soon here, and I think those will be some very interesting cities to watch.
Yeah.
As that is your real life study, and hopefully they have a big enough population size. I believe one of the cities was actually Quebec City. Let me look that up for you real quick here while you guys talk. But
Paul corrected me, actually. He was right. It's the what was it? The Y Combinator
Research Institute.
Yeah, the Y Combinator, which is also a nonprofit organization that does really awesome stuff. OpenAI is one of the subsidiaries of that. If you're into artificial intelligence, check out OpenAI. It's awesome. Anyways, as you were saying, if any of you viewers are interested in like what's actually going to happen in the future, because mixed reality is big, VR is big, 3D printing is big, but those are cool technologies. If you actually want to see what the future is going to look like and be like, and what living in the future is going to be like, go check out the Y Combinator Research Institution, and that will give you a really good example of what these people are prepping for and what very influential and big think tanks are expecting for the future. Very, very extremely intellectual people are planning for the future. They have stuff like they're trying to buy up land all across the world to create super cities, or not very. I don't remember how they word it correctly. I don't remember how they word it exactly, but it's basically they're buying up land and they're going to build cities and have people live there, and they're going to be like 100% electric, and they're going to be self-sustaining, and they're going to be, I don't know, all of these different things, you know. Someone linked Chad to OpenAI in the chat.
Yeah, I wait. Did you want OpenAI or does?
Just drop it all in the link chat anyway. I've said way too many stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, I mean, looking at the future, that is what they're going to do. They have like farming stuff on there. I think they're going to try to figure out how to do really good types of farming. I think they're doing the basic income. They're doing stuff with artificial intelligence. They're doing stuff with how you live. Oh man, there's so much cool technology. And if you want to actually see how like day-to-day life is expected to be in the future, that is probably the best example of it, at least one of the ones that I've seen here in the US, found. But oh man, so Austin, let's just do a little hypothetical. I'll throw one at you.
Okay.
Let's say I'm Sam Altman. Oh man, that'd be so cool to be Sam Altman. I come to you and I say, okay, we're gonna give you did they say what the basic income level was going to be, Paul?
I am actually looking it up right now, so you guys just can.
We'll say between 60 and 80K, or between 50 and 70. I don't know. Well, it's so different because if nobody's making any money, then I don't know. Let's just say I come in and I say, we're going to give you a livable wage.
The poverty line. Okay.
We'll give you a livable wage.
I was about to say
Sorry.
The poverty line in the United States is about like 30K for a family of 4. So anything above that is damn good.
Okay, so we'll just say 40. We're just going to say 40
40K.
because Sam Altman's rich and he's got a little bit extra funds to throw away. He gives you 40K. So you can now live your life how you want. What changes?
What changes?
What changes?
Well, I spend my life doing things I invest the money I have in other things, and I do what I want to do, and I don't.
What is that? What is? Give me more details. You do what you want to do. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I spend time, I don't know, traveling, innovating, working on startup companies, and doing just perfecting what I want to do, like video editing, filming, all that stuff.
Exactly. So you're not going to just be bored and do stuff, and you don't even know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And so this is the answers they're trying to solve right now. And more important that, because automation's coming. That's just a fact, and for the politicians to ignore it like that is complete and utter bullshit. That's just, as a fact, it's just bullshit. And so it's coming. And so these companies are going out and they're trying to find answers to these questions. I just proposed that question to you, and that was just hypothetical. Imagine if it really happened.
That'd be
and
awesome.
It would be awesome. And so for you, maybe you'll advance your skills, you'll do startups, you'll do all this stuff, but maybe other people work as their life. That's all they have to live for. They don't have these skills. They haven't built these skills or something like that. So it's so exciting to think about this stuff. And more than, I love mixed reality, I love 3D printing, I love all that VR, but I mean, a lot of our passion lies in that kind of stuff. It's so exciting to see what will happen. And oh man, I just can't wait for the future. Anyways, I'm excited. What, are you excited, Austin? Or are you scared?
A little of both. I mean, obviously.
So I was reading an article about automation. Uh-huh. We always come to automation. I just love talking about it. And it says that people that are graduating from college right now, by the time they are at retirement age, will have to reinvent themselves 1 to 6 times potentially.
Really?
So that means reinvent your skills, reinvent your career, reinvent your stuff like this.
Does that really mean like a college education is not necessary? Like, if you have to redo yourself 6 times, like. So
here's the interesting part. So there you go. You're starting to all click. So the article also says, and I'm not going to say this is all just hypothetical.
Of course.
This is all just hypothetical, future talk. Who knows? I mean, an asteroid could hit the Earth and we're back to square one. Who knows? Just hypothetical talk. They say that they say colleges are really silently struggling right now because they don't know what to teach for kids in the future, because what you learned back in the day when our parents went to college was relevant for forever. What they went to college is basically the same thing they do now. They could probably come and teach it and get pretty good on it, but it's such a different. They say that it was a fairly large number. I hate saying statistics that I don't actually know right off the top of my head. So I'm just going to say it was a fairly large number of degrees will be irrelevant within the next 2 decades, or decade and a half is what they said. But yeah, and a very significant large number. And that's where reinventing yourself comes into play, because there's some certain things in college that automation will take over, or maybe won't be as important anymore because of something else took it over, or I don't know.
So are you saying like a better route today would be a more focused, specialized education where you can hop around and quickly adapt to things?
It's what a lot of economists and a lot of futurists say is to do, to be the best at something and then be the best at being the best at something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, just hop around.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
And we've never seen that in a time like this, and people are very interested. I mean, it's also hard for high schools, because, think about trying to teach these high schoolers to prepare for, you're starting a kindergartner, and, a kindergartner, obviously, you're going to teach them the basics, and you're going to do stuff like this. So let's think maybe like a 5th grader, they still have, 7 years of school yet left, and they come in, and this is when you're going to start giving them like skills and knowledge and stuff like that. They've got all their multiplication, all that blah down. This is where we're going to start teaching them skills. But by the time they exit the college force, they're going to be in such a different world than when they got in. It's very interesting to see the progression and how fast that progression is happening.
So I guess you just have to become a good learner.
Exactly. So, Paul, sorry. You've probably been sitting there waiting to talk about your stuff. Go ahead.
No, I was just going off of that. It makes you really wonder, like that. What you just said made me really think, what is part of a necessary education anymore? Because once we have like robots and stuff like that are able to design other robots, or if say we never get to that point, do you think kids should just be taught math and none of like the arts? Like, should I be taught how to read and write? Well, I guess read and write is pretty important, but like, should I be taught reading at a higher level, like in like high literature, things like that? Should I be forced to read books like Huckleberry Finn, things like that? Like, what do you guys see as necessary education now that we have things like automation? Do you think a focus in math, like purely a math education, if you're going into like a primary school, is that the only way to do it? Because that's the only way you're going to be relevant in the future.
So, yeah. So branching off that, Chad just came in and says he feels like technology is the best route for kids nowadays. He says he wished they would have taught him coding in middle school. So that plays off of what you're saying exactly. What plays into a good education? Well, I'm one to not be I think this is a very special time where we have to not be reactionary and we have to be pro-actionary. I don't know, thinking about the future, And right now, let's say, let's start teaching kids how to code. Let's start teaching things how to do, or multiplication or whatever. Well, coding, by the time, if you start learning coding in middle school now, it's going to be those are great problem-solving skills. You should be learning those, But it's going to be irrelevant, I know my career. I am a web developer right now. I know my career in 10 years, probably not going to be here and probably not going to be as important as it was, because deep algorithm and stuff like that. A lot of futurists say that learning math, just if you're going to go to college, just learn math, physics, and deep learning, neurology and all that kind of stuff, learning how the brain works. And then you can learn how to code later. So that's what they're saying. But I guess thinking that's what's important now, but let's think in a little bit in the future. What's important? Well, if robots already do everything and a lot of the problems have already been solved, is arts what becomes important? Or is, surpassing that more important? I don't know. What do you think, Austin?
That's a really interesting question. Because there's so many variables that exist in that question that make it difficult to pinpoint an answer. But I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. I really don't know.
That's actually a fair answer. Yeah, that's actually a very fair answer. I don't know. Is it? Go ahead, Paul.
And the scary thing, like when you say, will we go to art? Well, even art can be done by robots. Like, there is an equation behind every like masterpiece. So that in the future, masterpieces can be made by robots. So what is there for humans to do? Like, what makes sense for humans to do anymore? I don't know.
Exactly. That's when you get into those ultra ambiguous, and I don't like to get into like super artificial intelligence level where it's like another human, But we've discussed before, everything in life is just an algorithm. It all is 2 + 2 always equals 4. Law of physics always apply, and to be able to account for that and to code for that, it is not easy, but it's doable. And I don't know. I think I don't know is a fair answer because it's true. Go ahead, Paul.
Do you think that in as like a result of all of this, like this fact that like maybe humans themselves will become irrelevant, do you think designers of these robots will kind of limit the progress that they make just in order to so we're going to make life extremely easy for people, but we're not going to teach robots how to do art, and we're not going to teach robots how to write and things like that. What do you guys think about that? Like, just people saying, all right, we're going to stop innovating on robots because we've gotten them to the point where they're useful to us, and then we're going to move elsewhere, or we're just going to start enjoying life and doing the things we've always wanted to do. Like, let's start focusing on exploring our oceans, or exploring the sea, or exploring space, or exploring caves, things like that.
Yes and no. I think humans have this, and I think this is why we're so great, and I think this is at the same time why we're so self-destructive, is we have this need to progress, this need to innovate, this need to push the boundaries. And I don't think anything anybody will ever do will stifle that. And even if it's for the greater good of humanity, someone's going to take that step. And I don't have Chad just brought up Terminator. And when we talk about this, especially a lot of older generations think about Terminator, they think about iRobot, they think about that. And I don't have a dystopian view of the future. I actually have quite a utopian view of the future. Definitely there will be, I think, as we've seen through time, humans and life exists the same. It's just through different mediums that it exists.
Is there any historical examples of that? History always repeats itself. So is there something?
History always repeats itself. So what I mean by this is, let's just use communication. Mm-hmm. Communication's an easy example. How back in caveman days did you communicate without English or anything like that? Okay, well, then a technology came about, or an advancement, a progression came out, and we learned words. Okay, well, people are still communicating. They're just using words to communicate. Okay, now they're using the written language. Then they're using this language. And then they're using phones. And then they're using the internet. And then they're using whatever's next. You know what I mean? It's a progression. But behind all of that, people are still communicating. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe it's this. But people are still communicating. Right. So
that's a good point.
I think, so people, I think, get a very dystopian view of the future. It's going to be radically different and radically things. And I think a lot of those values are innate in humans. And sure, they may be different, and maybe they may be delivered a different way, but just through a different medium. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with that. I do see a good view of the future. I wouldn't say utopian. I think we'll still have problems. But when I was looking into this the other day, and I saw someone bring up, wars are going to be fought by robots. Now, when I think about that, there's literally no point in throwing robots at another person's robots in some sort of war, because you're just wasting resources. You're not gaining anything out of it. So if you're just fighting with robots, that's just like playing a video game. So I don't see a reason for that. Just something I was thinking about in terms of that is there has to be some limits to automation, in the fact that just some cases they don't make any sense at all. Like right now, it makes sense for it makes sense for the U.S. military to be automated right now, because other militaries aren't automated. But once other militaries get automated, you're just throwing drones at drones. You're not changing the course of anything. Like, you're not killing the ideas of these people. Like, if you kill a leader of ISIS, well, you killed his ideas. Well, you didn't kill his ideas, but you killed the person who is capable of coming up with more ideas. But in the future, what if both parties have drones? You're just killing another man's drone. You're not doing anything to him.
Exactly. What were you going to say, Austin?
So that's like you were talking about how the median is changing. So this is kind of like the median changing with technology, but in kind of a pointless way.
War will still exist, and war has always been fought with human lives. Uh-huh. There's never been a war that has not been determined winners or losers by either land or human lives. Human lives being one of the major ones, because how do you defeat people? I mean, how do you defeat something? You destroy it, And so it'll be war. It'll just be through a different medium, such things as biological warfare, things that don't affect robots, which it's really freaky and gets a little bit Terminator-ish, but it's, it'll always still be there. Humans are just known for war, probably better than anything else. And so it'll be there. It'll just be a different medium for that. But, equilibrium, the world's really good at keeping equilibrium in things, and they can be offset for a little while, and then they can calm back down and be, lowerly set for a little while. I don't know. But older people get really scared, and I see a lot of fear mongering with automation and stuff like that, and I think we need to really change the way we deliver automation and the way we discuss it as a topic and the way we discuss technology as a whole, I think is completely wrong.
Well,
And go ahead.
a lot of people are against change, and especially when they don't know, like if they don't have a full view of what's actually going to be happening. And that's really a big issue with automation is, like we've discussed, we don't really know what's going to happen. And I think that does strike a lot of fear in people's minds. And so, yeah, if it can be conveyed in a certain way to make it seem, it's just, yeah, people just don't like change.
Okay, I can help you out a little bit. So people fear things when they don't understand them. That's just humans, you know. The more you understand, okay, so I'm afraid of snakes, but if I know when a snake's going to attack, or when a snake's not going to attack, all of a sudden a lot of fear goes. Or I know what kind of snakes attack and what kind of so I lose a lot of fear because I am knowledgeable about it. I know about it. So instead of just saying automation, robots are going to take our jobs, we need to teach people how they're going to take their jobs. And they're not necessarily taking their jobs. They may be replacing them, or, you know, there's other things to do it. You know, we need to deliver it. We need to teach people. And Austin, you might be a good example about this. I think back in our very first podcast, or one of our test ones at least, we discussed automation. And that was like right when you were fresh off your mission and we were kind of hitting you with a lot of new age ideology and stuff. Have now, since you've become more knowledgeable, have you noticed any progression or differing opinions than when we first started discussing this kind of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. My opinions personally have changed. I've kind of opened up to the idea of having automation and just accepting it as it is coming, and really trying to understand what it means for me in the future and how I can really be involved with it.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important to be in the presence of what technology is going to have an effect on you, you know? And yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we could do a supercut. We could go back and I don't think we probably have it somewhere, but I don't think it's live anywhere. And when we first talk about this, and understandably, you know, you were like a little bit hesitant and a little bit, as you should be with anything. You know, you should never just embrace anything. You should question it and think about it and mull it over. You know, I don't want you to just automatically do it. But now it's you're a perfect example, and my parents are a perfect example. When we first discussed those things, it was very, I don't like talking about this. I don't want to talk about this because I'm scared of it because I don't understand it. But the more we talk about it, the more we understand, the more everything like this, the more my parents and you have come to adopt these ideas. And obviously, maybe it's not for everybody, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe
I'm just susceptible to people's opinions. I don't know.
Maybe you're susceptible to opinions or reason or whatever it happens to be. But I think that's one of the major things we can do now, just like to help in our day-to-day lives, is when people talk about scared of robots and talk about this, you ask them, why are you scared? You know, what is this? Or maybe try to console them and try to be like, you know, there's not really a reason to be scared. Or maybe there is a reason to be scared, and maybe I'm completely off base. I'm totally open to hearing about why. But what do you think, Paul? And I think we'll close out soon after this. So go ahead and while Sarah closes your remarks.
I just think, just kind of talking about like how people don't fully understand. I think the press about stuff like this is very fear-mongering. So there was a article you sent to me a little while ago, Eric, where it was about like some like tax returns being automated, things like that, and people were like, oh no, like I'm an accounting major, I'm about to enter the accounting profession, and people were like, oh no, accounting jobs are going to die. No, people don't realize they just made accounting that much easier. Like they just took time people were wasting on not giving their clients value, and they gave it to a robot. And that's good because that means we can spend more time with the client explaining what the numbers the robot calculates means. So to say that automation's taking away jobs like that and other jobs, I wouldn't say that. I would say it's freeing up people's time so they can spend time on harder activities that a robot can't get to yet. And I think we'll always have these harder activities or things that just need to be explained by a human that a robot at this point can't explain to you in a way that a human can like tell how you're feeling about something and answer your questions as well at this point, in my opinion.
No, exactly. And that breaks it down perfectly like what I said. So sure, this is going to change your medium of how you do accounting, but you're still going to be doing accounting, and the accounting still needs to be done, whether it's by robots or whether it's by people or whether it's a mix of both. You know.
So in a sense, this is the progression of automation is fully embracing the fact, the point that Eric brought up about us always wanting to progress and become better and better and better, and automation will do exactly that for us.
Yeah, so from the stat I was looking at, it can do like 257,000 tax returns in a day if it's running at full capacity. So that's incredible. That take one accountant like years to do.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. But people don't realize the company, the CPA firm isn't firing that accountant. They're just letting them go on to harder things, which is solving mergers and acquisitions, things like that robots haven't reached yet. And even then, there's still going to be something harder to do, something that we haven't gotten to. So
Exactly.
for me,
or maybe a
automation
different
isn't
kind of counting we haven't even thought of yet. Maybe there's like problems that like exist that we haven't even tapped into yet with money, because all that time that you freed up from that, not having to do that anymore, what are you going to spend it doing? I mean, there's definitely problems. Like you said, there's going to be problems. Maybe stuff we don't even have spectrum of now, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, one of the big ones right now is tracking costs. So a lot of accounting is estimating things, and not knowing exactly like we know exactly how much we spent on it, but we don't know exactly how to allocate that cost out. So that's something that right now a robot can't do, and it'd be great to spend more time doing. And the only reason we don't spend more time doing is because it's costs us a ton of money and we don't have time to do it. So that's just, for example, one area where in my profession we could definitely start to improve, and robots taking these menial tasks that would generally be given to a beginning accountant and automating them, that is a good thing, and getting your beginning accountants learning at a higher level within the organization and not having to do like the grunt tasks. So I think it's a very, very good thing, automation, and to me, I'm not scared about it really that much right now, because I just see it as making people's jobs easier and not taking their jobs. So that's just the way I see it.
Like you said, fear-mongering, media's fear-mongering. They come in and they say these statistics, 33% of jobs will not exist anymore, or there will not be these, 50 to 38% of jobs won't be there in 10 years. And I think that's a very fear-mongering way to say that. You could say 50% of jobs as we know them will not exist anymore, and that's a completely different way. When you throw that as we know them, it's a completely different tone. It's a completely different, meaning behind it. And yeah, so I think just delivering it in a better way, and the future's coming. No reason to be scared of it. Just see how you can fit into that puzzle piece, and I think that's good. Okay, any closing remarks, boys?
But just find your place in the future, and no reason to be scared. Just don't pay attention to the statistics. Don't pay attention to the words that go with the statistics with a lot of people. OpenAI is a great site if you're interested in automation and what its effects are, and what people in the private sector are doing to stop it. So I'll leave you with that.
Mm-hmm. And be sure to, if you have any questions or comments or ideas of future topics for the Hollow Herald podcast, please sure to let us know. And make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Hollow Herald.
Thank you for listening live. We will be streaming live probably every Monday night at about 7:30 Mountain Time. We would love to have more people here. I'd like to thank some of the people that stopped in today. We had Chad stop in, and we had a couple other people. They're kind of lost in the comments now, but had some great discussion with them. They spurred on some awesome topics, and if there's anything you want to pick our brains about, we'd like to pick your brains about, go ahead and join us on the stream. That's probably the best way to do that. But if you're listening to the recorded version, leave a comment down below and let us know what you guys thought. And thank you very much. This has been the Hollow Herald podcast, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.